In 2018, construction workers clearing brush in the Tennessee mountains made a discovery that would reopen one of the state's most haunting cold cases. Buried beneath fallen logs and 15 years of forest growth, they found a rusted metal box. Inside that box was a teacher's journal, wrapped in plastic, containing his final words before he vanished without a trace. What those pages revealed would expose a cover-up so shocking, it would destroy an entire community's faith in the people they trusted most.
Have you ever trusted someone completely? Someone you would trust with your life, with your children's lives? Have you ever wondered what secrets the people closest to you might be hiding behind their smiles? What if I told you that the person you trust most could be the very person plotting against you?
This is the story of Mr. Nolan Archer, a beloved science teacher who made learning come alive for hundreds of students in Knoxville, Tennessee. Every spring, he led the annual school trip to the Great Smoky Mountains. Parents did not hesitate to send their children with him. He was the kind of teacher students remembered forever. But in 2003, during what should have been a routine educational trip, Mr. Archer walked into the woods and never came back. For 15 long years, his disappearance remained a mystery. Search teams combed every trail. Helicopters swept the mountains. Bloodhounds followed every possible scent. Nothing, not a single trace of the man who had dedicated his life to teaching and protecting children. The case went cold. Life moved on. The community mourned and tried to heal. But the mountains kept their secrets, and someone who knew the truth continued living among them, trusted and respected, building a successful career on a foundation of lies. What they found in that journal did not just solve a cold case. It shattered everything the people of Willow Creek thought they knew about trust, about safety, about the person who had been leading their school for years. The truth was so devastating that it would change how they looked at everyone around them forever. If stories like this fascinate you, smash that like button right now and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had your trust completely betrayed by someone you never suspected? Share your story below, because what you are about to hear will make you question everyone you think you know. Willow Creek, Tennessee was the kind of town where everybody knew everybody. Nestled in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains, it was home to just over 4,000 people who took pride in their tight-knit community. The downtown consisted of a few local businesses, a diner that served the best biscuits in 3 counties, and Willow Creek Middle School, which sat at the heart of everything that mattered to the families who called this place home. At that school, no teacher was more beloved than Mr. Nolan Archer. Standing 6 feet 2 inches tall with sandy brown hair and a laugh that could fill an entire classroom, he had been teaching 8th grade science for 12 years. Students who had graduated years earlier would still stop by his classroom just to say hello. Parents requested him specifically for their children. He had a gift for making complex scientific concepts feel like exciting adventures. Mr. Archer was not just a teacher. He coached the school's science bowl team to 3 consecutive state championships. He organized the annual science fair that drew families from neighboring towns. He stayed after school to help struggling students, never charging a dime for tutoring. On weekends, you could find him at school football games or community events, always ready with an encouraging word or a terrible science joke that somehow made everyone laugh anyway. The crown jewel of Mr. Archer's teaching career was the annual science trip to the Great Smoky Mountains. For 7 straight years, he had led groups of 8th graders on this 3-day educational adventure. The trip had become a rite of passage for Willow Creek students. Parents saved money all year to ensure their children could participate. Former students would return home from high school and college, asking if Mr. Archer was still taking kids to the mountains. During these trips, students would hike ancient trails, study wildlife in their natural habitats, and learn about geology by touching rocks that were millions of years old. At night, they would gather around campfires, where Mr. Archer would tell stories about the Cherokee people who once called these mountains home. He would point out constellations and explain how early explorers used the stars to navigate through these very same peaks and valleys. In 2003, the school hired a new assistant principal, Miss Lila Morton. She was young, ambitious, and eager to make her mark on the school district. Fresh out of graduate school with a master's degree in educational administration, she had impressed the school board with her innovative ideas and her determination to modernize their programs. Miss Morton volunteered to help with the spring science trip, seeing it as an opportunity to bond with students and demonstrate her commitment to hands-on learning. Mr. Archer welcomed the extra supervision, especially since they had 32 students signed up that year, the largest group ever. The mountains awaited them with perfect spring weather, budding wildflowers, and trails that promised discovery around every bend. The buses pulled into the parking area near Klingman's Dome at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a beautiful Tuesday in late April. 32 8th graders poured out, their voices echoing across the mountain air as they caught their first glimpse of the rustic cabins that would be their home for the next 3 days. The Great Smoky Mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, their peaks still dusted with the last traces of winter snow, while the valleys below burst with the fresh green of spring. Mr. Archer was in his absolute element. He moved among the students like a conductor leading an orchestra, assigning cabin roommates, organizing luggage, and answering the 100 questions that came his way every minute. His enthusiasm was infectious as he pointed out different bird calls and explained how the mountains got their distinctive blue-gray haze. The first afternoon hike was everything the students had hoped for. They followed a gentle trail that wound through ancient oak and maple trees, stopping frequently as Mr. Archer identified animal tracks in the soft earth and showed them how to recognize edible plants that Native Americans had used for centuries. Students who usually spent their afternoons glued to video games were now racing ahead to see who could spot the next interesting rock formation or unusual wildflower. That evening, after a dinner of hot dogs and beans cooked over an open fire, the real magic began. The students gathered in a circle around the crackling flames while Mr. Archer told ghost stories that had been passed down through generations of mountain folklore. He spoke of mysterious lights that danced between the trees, of hikers who had heard voices calling their names from empty trails, and of an old Cherokee legend about spirits that protected these mountains from those who did not belong. The students hung on every word, some laughing nervously, others glancing over their shoulders at the dark forest beyond their circle of firelight. Even Miss Morton seemed captivated, though she sat slightly apart from the group, occasionally checking her watch or writing notes in a small notebook she always carried. Later that evening, after the students had been sent to their cabins for the night, a few of them overheard raised voices from the direction of the adult quarters. Through their cabin window, they could see Mr. Archer and Miss Morton standing near the edge of the firelight, engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation. Their voices were too low to make out specific words, but their body language suggested disagreement about something important. The argument lasted only a few minutes before both adults walked away in different directions. None of the students thought much of it at the time. Adults disagreed about things all the time, and it would be forgotten by morning. But some conversations, once started, cannot be taken back. Wednesday morning dawned crisp and clear, with sunlight filtering through the canopy of trees surrounding their campsite. The students woke up energized and ready for their second day of adventure. Breakfast was a cheerful affair of scrambled eggs, bacon, and pancakes cooked on portable camp stoves, with everyone sharing stories about the strange sounds they had heard in the forest during the night. Mr. Archer announced the day's plan with his usual enthusiasm. They would tackle a longer hike today, exploring 2 different trails that would eventually meet at a scenic overlook, perfect for lunch. To manage the large group more effectively and give everyone a better learning experience, they would split into 2 smaller groups. Mr. Archer would lead 16 students up the Thorny Ridge Trail, a moderately challenging path that wound through old-growth forest and offered spectacular views of the surrounding peaks. Miss Morton would take the remaining 16 students along the Appalachian Trail Connector, an easier route that featured several educational stops about local flora and fauna. Both groups would meet at the designated lunch spot at exactly 12:30 in the afternoon. The separation felt natural and well-planned. Parents and students trusted both adults completely. Miss Morton had proven herself capable during the previous day's activities, and Mr. Archer had been leading groups through these mountains for 7 years without incident. The morning hike went exactly as planned. Mr. Archer's group made excellent time, stopping frequently to examine interesting rock formations and identify bird species. The students were engaged and excited, asking questions about everything they saw. They reached the lunch meeting point 15 minutes early, giving them time to rest and enjoy the breathtaking view while they waited for Miss Morton's group. Miss Morton arrived right on schedule with her 16 students, all of whom seemed equally thrilled with their morning adventure. The combined group spread out across the clearing, unpacking sandwiches and sharing stories about what they had discovered on their respective trails. Around 12:45, as the students finished eating, Mr. Archer noticed a narrow side trail branching off from the main path. It was not marked on their maps, but it appeared well-worn and potentially interesting from an educational standpoint. He mentioned to Miss Morton that he wanted to scout it quickly to see if it might be suitable for an afternoon exploration with the students. He promised to be back in 10 minutes, 15 at the most. The students barely looked up from their conversations as he disappeared into the trees, his familiar voice calling back reassurances that he would return shortly. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Before we continue, I need to ask you something that will stay with you long after this story ends. What would you do if someone you were responsible for just vanished without explanation? What would go through your mind in those first terrifying moments when you realize something has gone horribly wrong? Let me know in the comments below, because what happened next changed everything. By 1:15, Miss Morton was calling his name. By 1:30, she was organizing the students into search pairs, having them shout his name while staying within sight of the main clearing. By 2 o'clock, she was using the emergency radio to contact park rangers. Within hours, the mountains filled with the sound of helicopters, search dogs, and dozens of volunteers combing every trail, every ravine, every possible hiding place. The students were evacuated back to town that evening, their faces filled with confusion and fear. Their adventure turned into a nightmare none of them would ever forget. The search for Mr. Nolan Archer consumed the Great Smoky Mountains for 3 solid weeks. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents joined local law enforcement, park rangers, and hundreds of volunteers in the most extensive manhunt the region had ever seen. Helicopters with thermal imaging cameras swept every square mile of forest. Bloodhounds followed scent trails that led nowhere. Experienced mountain rescue teams rappelled down cliffs and explored caves that had not been entered by humans in decades. Not a single trace of Mr. Archer was found. No footprints beyond the main trail. No torn clothing caught on branches. No signs of a struggle or accident. He had simply vanished as completely as if he had never existed at all. Investigators explored every possible theory. Had he fallen into a hidden ravine? Mountain rescue teams checked every crevice deep enough to hide a body. Had he been attacked by wildlife? Black bears were common in the area, but there were no signs of animal activity and no blood evidence anywhere along the trail he had taken. Could he have gotten lost and wandered deeper into the wilderness? Mr. Archer knew these mountains better than most park rangers. He had hiked these trails dozens of times and always carried a compass and emergency supplies. Could he have suffered a medical emergency? He was in excellent physical condition with no known health problems. The most disturbing theory was that he had simply walked away from his life. But everyone who knew Mr. Archer dismissed this immediately. He would never abandon his students. His car remained untouched in the parking area. His apartment showed no signs of planning a departure, and his bank accounts remained untouched. Investigators interviewed every person who had been on the trip, looking for any detail that might provide a clue. During these interviews, several students mentioned the argument they had overheard between Mr. Archer and Miss Morton on the first night. When questioned about this, Miss Morton explained that they had disagreed about hiking routes for the next day, nothing more significant than a professional difference of opinion. Throughout the crisis, Miss Morton had shown remarkable composure and leadership. She had handled the emergency with calm efficiency, organized the students during the initial search, and provided emotional support to the families when they arrived to collect their children. The school board praised her quick thinking and professional response during an impossible situation. After 3 weeks with no new leads, the active search was scaled back. The case officially remained open, but with no evidence and no suspects, there was little more investigators could do. Willow Creek slowly tried to return to normal, but nothing felt the same. The annual science trip was permanently cancelled. Trust had been shaken in ways that could not be easily repaired. Time has a way of healing even the deepest wounds, or at least covering them with enough new memories that the pain becomes bearable. As 2003 faded into 2004, and then into the years that followed, Willow Creek slowly learned to live with the mystery of Mr. Nolan Archer's disappearance. The community found ways to honor his memory while moving forward. A scholarship was established in his name for students pursuing science education. His classroom was converted into a memorial learning center where his photograph hung alongside quotes about curiosity and discovery that he had shared with students over the years. Miss Lila Morton emerged from the tragedy as a respected leader. Her handling of the crisis had impressed both the school board and the community. In 2004, she was promoted to principal of Willow Creek Middle School. Under her leadership, the school flourished. Test scores improved, new programs were introduced, and she became a beloved figure in the community. Parents trusted her with their children. Teachers respected her administrative skills. She spoke at community events, served on local committees, and was often mentioned as a potential candidate for superintendent when the position became available. She had built a successful career on the foundation of that terrible day when she had stepped up during an impossible situation. The story of Mr. Archer's disappearance gradually transformed from fresh tragedy into local legend. New teachers heard whispered versions during their orientation. Students would occasionally ask about the empty trophy case that had once held his Science Bowl championships. Older residents would sometimes mention his name when discussing the good old days, but always with sadness, and always followed by speculation about what really happened to him. The mystery became part of Willow Creek's identity, like the old stories about Civil War battles, or the legends about moonshine runners who had once hidden in these same mountains. It was history, painful but distant, something that belonged to the past. Life had moved on. The case was cold. The truth seemed buried forever. But the mountains never forget. 15 years after Mr. Nolan Archer vanished, the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation announced plans to build a new ranger station near the old campsite where his story had begun. The location would provide better access for emergency services and educational programs in the Great Smoky Mountains. In early September of 2018, a construction crew from Johnson City arrived to begin clearing the designated area. The work was routine forest management, removing fallen trees and thick undergrowth that had accumulated over decades of natural growth. The crew had been working for 3 days when Foreman Dale Richards made a discovery that would change everything. While operating a brush cutter near a cluster of fallen logs, Richards noticed something metallic glinting beneath the decomposing wood and forest debris. At first, he assumed it was discarded camping equipment or old park maintenance tools, but when he cleared away the organic matter, he found a rusted metal ammunition box, the kind used by hunters and campers to protect valuables from moisture and animals. The box was locked, but years of exposure to the elements had weakened the metal enough that Richards was able to pry it open with a crowbar. Inside, wrapped carefully in multiple layers of plastic bags, was a leather-bound journal. The pages were yellowed and water-stained around the edges, but the plastic had protected most of the contents from complete destruction. Richards opened the journal and immediately recognized the name written on the first page: Nolan Archer, Willow Creek Middle School. His hands began shaking as he realized what he had found. But the journal was not the only discovery. While carefully examining the area around the metal box, the construction crew spotted something else partially buried beneath the roots of a massive oak tree. Fragments of bone, pieces of fabric, and what appeared to be the remains of hiking boots were scattered in a small depression that had been hidden by 15 years of forest growth. Work stopped immediately. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was contacted, and within hours the area was cordoned off as a crime scene. Forensic anthropologists were brought in to carefully excavate and examine the remains. Dental records confirmed what everyone in Willow Creek already knew in their hearts. They had found Mr. Nolan Archer. The news hit the community like a physical blow. Parents who had trusted him with their children, students who had searched for him as 8th graders and were now adults with children of their own, all felt the grief return as fresh as it had been 15 years earlier. But grief was quickly replaced by questions. How had search teams missed this location? Why was there a journal hidden in a metal box? What had Mr. Archer written in those final pages? Guys, this is where the story gets absolutely insane. Make sure you are subscribed to Criminal Mind Cortex, because what they found in that journal will blow your mind and change everything you thought you knew about this case. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation treated Mr. Archer's journal as the most crucial piece of evidence in the case. Lead investigator, Detective Sarah Williams, spent days carefully photographing each page before forensic experts attempted to decipher the water-damaged portions. What they found would turn 15 years of assumptions completely upside down. The journal entries began exactly as everyone expected. Mr. Archer had written detailed notes about the trip preparations, student behavior observations, and educational goals for each day. His handwriting was neat and methodical, reflecting the careful teacher everyone remembered. Monday, April 21st, 2003. Arrived at campsite 2:15. Students excited and well-behaved. Weather perfect for hiking tomorrow. Need to remember to point out the wildflower identification markers on the Forney Ridge Trail. Tuesday, April 22nd. Excellent first day. Students engaged during evening program. Note to self, bring extra batteries for flashlights next year. Miss Morton seems nervous about her first overnight trip with students, but she is handling responsibilities well. The entries continued in this innocent, professional tone for several pages. Mr. Archer wrote about individual students who were overcoming fears, about teaching moments that had gone particularly well, and about his excitement for the next day's longer hike. But then the tone shifted dramatically. Wednesday, April 23rd, 11:30 at night. Cannot sleep. Saw something today that makes no sense. Need to write this down in case something happens. During afternoon scouting walk, discovered small campsite, hidden about half-mile off main trail. Found Miss Morton there, meeting with man I recognized as Jake Morrison, the poacher who was arrested last year for illegal hunting in park boundaries. The next entry revealed details that made investigators realize they had been looking at this case completely wrong for 15 years. They were exchanging envelopes. Morrison handed Miss Morton thick manila envelope. She gave him smaller white envelope in return. Could not get close enough to see contents, but conversation appeared tense. Heard Morrison say something about regular schedule and no more changes. Miss Morton looked angry, told him this had to be the last time. Mr. Archer had stumbled upon what appeared to be an illegal wildlife trafficking operation. The entries revealed that he had recognized Morrison from newspaper articles about poaching arrests, but Morrison had never been successfully prosecuted due to lack of evidence. Stayed hidden behind trees for 20 minutes. They discussed locations, timing, and what Morrison called the merchandise. Miss Morton kept checking her watch and looking nervous. Before leaving, Morrison threatened her, said she could not back out now because she knew too much. The implications were staggering. Miss Leila Morton, the trusted assistant principal who had been praised for her handling of the emergency, had been involved in criminal activity right under everyone's noses. But the final entry was the most chilling of all. Written in shaky handwriting that showed Mr. Archer's growing fear, it revealed just how dangerous his discovery had become. Wednesday, April 23rd, near midnight. Confronted Miss Morton about what I saw. She denied everything at first, then became defensive and angry, claims she is being blackmailed by Morrison, that she got involved to pay off student loans but wants out, says she will handle the situation herself, and begged me not to report this to authorities. Do not believe her story. The final lines sent chills through everyone who read them. If anything happens to me, look to Leila Morton. She is not who she seems. I fear I have seen too much, and she knows it. Tomorrow I will contact park rangers. I pray I am making the right decision. Armed with Mr. Archer's journal, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation reopened the case with renewed determination. Detective Williams contacted Miss Leila Morton, now Principal Morton, requesting her presence at the Sheriff's Department for questioning. After 15 years of being viewed as a hero who had handled a tragedy with grace, Morton was about to face the most difficult conversation of her life. Morton arrived at the station on a Thursday morning in late September, accompanied by her attorney. She appeared calm and professional, the same composed demeanor that had earned her respect throughout the community. When presented with excerpts from the journal, she initially maintained her innocence with convincing sincerity. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Morton told investigators. "Nolan was obviously confused or mistaken about what he thought he saw. I never met with any poacher. I have dedicated my entire career to education and serving this community." But investigators had not been idle during the weeks since the journal's discovery. Financial records revealed that in 2003, Morton had been drowning in student loan debt, credit card payments and medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment. Bank records showed several large cash deposits in the months leading up to the school trip, deposits that did not match her teaching salary. Further investigation revealed Morton's connection to Jake Morrison, the poacher mentioned in the journal. Morrison had died in a hunting accident in 2008, but records showed that Morton's brother had served time in prison with Morrison in the late 1990s. Phone records from 2003 revealed multiple calls between Morton and a number registered to Morrison's cousin. The breakthrough came when Detective Williams decided to re-interview everyone who had been on that fateful trip. Most of the former students were now adults with families of their own, but they remembered details about those 3 days with startling clarity. 29-year-old Michael Peterson, who had been 13 during the trip, contacted investigators with information that changed everything. He remembered seeing Miss Morton return to the main campsite alone on Wednesday afternoon, nearly an hour before she raised the alarm about Mr. Archer's disappearance. She was muddy and looked really upset, Peterson told investigators. Her clothes were dirty like she had been crawling through the woods, and she kept checking her watch. When we asked where Mr. Archer was, she said he was still exploring the trail, but something about her voice seemed off. Confronted with this new testimony and mounting evidence, Morton's attorney advised her that cooperation might be her best option. On October 15, 2018, sitting in the same interview room where she had once been praised as a hero, Leila Morton finally told the truth. The meeting with Morrison had been real. She had been helping him traffic illegal wildlife parts through the park in exchange for money to pay her debts. When Mr. Archer discovered their operation, she panicked. During their confrontation on the trail, she pushed him away from her. He fell, striking his head on a large rock. On November 3rd, 2018, Miss Lila Morton was arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter, conspiracy to commit wildlife trafficking, and obstruction of justice. The woman, who had spent 15 years being praised as a community leader, was led away in handcuffs while news cameras captured every moment for the shocked residents of Willow Creek. The trial began the following spring and lasted 3 weeks. Morton's defense team argued that Mr. Archer's death had been a tragic accident, that she had panicked in the moment and made terrible decisions driven by fear. The prosecution painted a different picture, a calculated individual who had used her position of trust to facilitate criminal activity and had covered up a death to protect herself. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges. Morton was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 8 years. The judge noted that her abuse of the trust placed in her by students, parents, and the community warranted the maximum sentence allowed under the law. The conviction sent shockwaves through Willow Creek that took years to fully process. Parents questioned how they had failed to see the signs. Teachers wondered if they really knew their colleagues. Students who had been on that trip struggled with the realization that the person who had comforted them during their worst nightmare had been responsible for creating it. The school board issued a formal apology to the community and implemented new policies requiring extensive background checks and financial audits for all administrators. Trust, once broken so completely, would take generations to rebuild. But from this tragedy came something positive. In 2019, Willow Creek Middle School announced that the annual science trip to the Great Smoky Mountains would be reinstated. The program was renamed the Nolan Archer Memorial Science Adventure, with new safety protocols and multiple chaperones required for every trip. A bronze plaque was installed at the trailhead where Mr. Archer had vanished, honoring his dedication to education and his love for these mountains. It reads, "In memory of Nolan Archer, who taught us to explore the world with curiosity and courage." Each year, new groups of 8th graders hike the same trails where this story unfolded. They learn about science, nature, and the importance of seeking truth, even when that truth is painful to accept. This story teaches us that the people we trust most can sometimes be hiding the darkest secrets. The mask of respectability can conceal hearts capable of terrible things. What is a time someone broke your trust completely? Share your story in the comments below, because we all need to support each other through these difficult experiences. And if you want more true crime stories that will keep you up at night, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Criminal Mind Cortex. Today, if you visit the Great Smoky Mountains and hike the Thorny Ridge Trail, you will find a bronze plaque mounted on a large stone near the spot where Mr. Nolan Archer took his final steps. The metal has already begun to develop the green patina that comes with mountain weather, but the words remain clear and powerful. Every spring, a new generation of Willow Creek 8th graders makes the journey to read those words and learn about the teacher who died seeking truth. These students, born years after the tragedy, listen as their chaperones explain why this memorial exists and why the lesson it teaches matters more than any science fact they might discover on the trails. The story of Nolan Archer and Lila Morton has become required reading in criminal justice programs across Tennessee. It demonstrates how crimes can remain hidden for years, but also how truth has a way of emerging when we least expect it. Evidence buried beneath 15 years of forest growth still held the power to demand justice. In the end, this case teaches us that secrets have weight. They press down on the people carrying them until something gives way. The mountains that Mr. Archer loved so much became the guardians of his final words, protecting his journal until the right moment arrived for truth to triumph. No matter how deep we bury our secrets, no matter how much time passes, justice never stops searching for a way to break through the darkness and reach the light.